All right. Well, welcome to our safety series, private podcast, panel discussion. And as I was thinking about our time together today, I really wanted to be able to find the best people that I could find to have a conversation about safety. So before we officially get started, I want to introduce you to our moderator for today, the one and only Amy Slate, your breakup broker. So, Amy, thank you so much for leading this conversation today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, let's go around quick. I just want to do a brief introduction. Who are you? What do you do? And why are you passionate about this topic of safety, particularly for people that are going to be going through divorce? So, Amy, let's start with you.
Sure. So I am a licensed real estate agent here in Massachusetts, as well as Florida. And I've been an agent for 8 years now and love the ins and outs of real estate. Most recently, had a personal interaction with divorce. And as I've kind of gotten roots in the community of women going through divorce, realized that there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and just overwhelm for these women as they are navigating the real estate pieces of their divorce. And I want to be an advocate and support and educate them as much as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome. Freddie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Freddie Harris. I am a licensed private investigator. I also specialize as a physical security expert. I got involved with this many years ago as an investigator working on divorce cases and finding a lot of clients needing safety and security strategies. That became so common that I decided to focus more on that. It's a huge passion because I feel that everyone should feel safe, and when they no longer feel safe, I like to be a part of getting them back to that lifestyle where they can feel like they can live life as comfortably as they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So grateful that you're here. All right. And Dr. Lisa.
Hey everyone, it's good to be here with you this morning. I'm Lisa Fox. I'm a retired surgeon and coach. I specialize in betrayal, trauma, and abuse recovery. And as all things, a lot of our careers and passions are born out of our ashes, as is mine. And I'm really passionate about this field because I believe so many women have been in toxic dynamics that when they go to enter the divorce process, they haven't been able to do the healing to deal effectively with their spouse to be able to get out well because they're still living in a state of confusion. And so my goal is to help women to come to a place of clarity, to be able to come to a place where they're standing and they're grounding and they're knowing so that they can move forward and make informed choices that align with their values and beliefs that are based on what they want and what they desire, and be grounded in how they feel about how they're moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. So grateful that you're here. Lastly, Rebecca Stern.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Stern. I have a mediation practice, Pearl Mediation. I also do parenting coordination, and I'm also a special education parent advocate. And I've seen so many times couples come into mediation where there is a total power imbalance. And to me, that's not going to make for an equitable outcome. So I became very interested in providing, usually the women, but not always, in those situations with the education, the tools, the team to help put them on an even playing field, do away with that power imbalance as much as possible, help them know what things to put in an agreement that can protect them so that they end the process on higher ground, feeling empowered and able to move forward in a good direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Love all of that. And I know that those of you who are listening are definitely seeing, right, why each of these individuals was invited to be part of the safety series. And kind of like everybody said, I think Dr. Lisa said it best, like, hey, a lot of times we're called to make change out of the things that have been, ashes for us. And really, to be very honest and transparent about how this even came about. It goes back to January when I unfortunately found out that my 18-year-old daughter, was being physically, emotionally, financially, sexually abused by her boyfriend. And I realized in that moment, the people that I had immediately in my phone that I could call, within 24 hours, we had her phone locked down. The school was aware. I had been on a call with Freddie. He had actually talked to me and my daughter. I had looked at, a restraining order. I had an attorney who was willing to come on board, like literally 24 hours. And I stood there and I thought, my daughter's 18, right? Does she fully understand how much protection we can provide for her because we know what to do? My husband was dealing with the boyfriend and the boyfriend's dad and all of that crazy that went along with it. He was actually mediating those types of conversations. He's super calm. It was all the things, like it was a tag team effort. And I remember thinking, well, what about for my clients though, who don't have Freddie on speed dial, who don't have an attorney that they can call? And people said, Rhonda, you tell me what you need. And I have goosebumps just thinking about that. The other part of that is my daughter lives at home. She's a senior in high school. I can do the lockdown because I'm in charge, right? Mm-hmm. But for those women that are going to be going through divorce or finding themselves in a tricky safety concern situation, they don't have their parents there on lockdown. They're most likely not living at home. They don't, have their soon-to-be ex-spouse / abuser who has access to the garage code and, all the things. And I was like, no, this is, we're going to make something, some lemonade out of a situation that was absolutely the most heart-wrenching thing I've ever gone through. And I was the one who also went through a lot of the evidence around the abuse that we had found. And it was painful. So all that to say, I'm very grateful that I'm in a position where I can pull together some of the best people that I can find from across the country, coast to coast and everywhere in between, to have a conversation today about some practical things that you can do, that our listeners can do to be able to help. And along those lines, right, I just want to say, listen, at any point throughout our conversation, if you feel like you need to pause the recording, step away, take a walk, grab a beverage, a glass of water or some tea, please do that. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, we're going to include every single person that's on here. Their contact information is not only going to be scrolling along the bottom if you're watching the video, but also in the show notes. And I want you to feel free to reach out to these individuals, have an initial conversation, see how they might be able to support you in whatever it is that you're going through. Of course, if it's an immediate concern, right, there may be times where you just have to pick up the phone and call 911, right? I mean, there's going to be those level of instances where you just need to call, right? Your local police department immediately if you are concerned for your safety. But we want to also try to get ahead of this, right? And so with that, I am really grateful to be able to turn over our conversation today to our moderator and facilitator, Amy, and she's going to be facilitating our conversation. So make sure you've got a paper, pen handy, be able to take some notes, because we are here wholeheartedly to support you today.
All right. And with that, we'll get started. I do just want to set the stage and say we've got our conversation kind of bucketed into 4 categories, which are legal safety, financial safety, physical safety, and emotional safety. So that's how we'll kind of work through the conversation today. So expect kind of that flow. And we're going to start with legal safety. I think for a lot of us who are just beginning, we maybe don't think about this, but things can escalate quickly. And so knowing what your options are when you need to put them in play in short order is super helpful. So I guess my question for the panel is, what's the first thing someone should do if they are thinking about divorce and are considering that they may need some legal protections, such as court orders, protective orders, things like that? I don't know, Rebecca or Freddie, who wants to take this on, or Lisa?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think the first thing you should do is contact a local professional who can help be an advocate for you, explain to you what your rights are, what your options are. If we're talking about going to court, getting something like a temporary restraining order, you can contact an attorney, you can contact a mediator like me, and I can either help you myself or refer you to the appropriate attorney. If you don't have the means and you're worried about the large cost of getting an attorney, every state has services that are available to you. Legal aid here in New Jersey, there are Legal Services of New Jersey. There are private organizations that offer help at low or no cost. So I would say, even if, contact any one of us. We can help get you in touch with whatever the organization is in your state, if that's what's needed, or we can get you a referral to an attorney. But really, before you do anything, you want to understand what your rights are, what your options are, and then get that legal professional in place if it's necessary to do some sort of emergency order. And by emergency order, I mean, if you feel threatened in terms of your safety, you can sort of bypass that longer wait time to be in front of a judge that you might experience on a different issue, and usually pretty quickly get in there and get something in place so that you're protected, so that that person is not allowed within a certain distance of you for a certain amount of time.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And I think knowing when to make that phone call and when to call those authorities and all that is probably something that's super uncertain for a lot of these women. Freddie, do you have any suggestions about, like, what is that point where it's like, oh no, I need to call the authorities? Like, what is that kind of setting or experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And this can be a very scary situation. To try to help simplify that, I would say, if you're in a situation where you can't leave, for instance, you need to lock yourself in a room or lock yourself in your apartment or just lock yourself in your car. Once you're locked in there, call the police. If it's a situation where you just took off running, and that's not wrong either. If your body says, let's get out of here, and as we say, you do the Nike defense and you just start running, when you get yourself to that next point of safety, if that's run to a neighbor or run into a store, even if you have to yell and scream and throw your shoe at moving cars to get them to stop, once you get to that next level of temporary safety, then call them. But as best you can, do try to get yourself safe. And in other classes we talk about if you need to defend yourself in that transition as well, but you want to call them as soon as it is safe enough to do so.
Awesome. And this actually reminds me of something that I've heard Dr. Lisa talk about that the thought never even crossed my mind, is we all have our little key fobs, right, to unlock our doors. And she mentioned that there's a way to program it so that only your driver's side unlocks, because, again, not to create the chaos in our minds, but if someone is trying to get in your passenger door, knowing that only your driver's side door is unlocked and you get in and get away is a game changer. I do want to add in along kind of this line, as we're talking about resources and guidance and advice, make sure you're listening to the experts. There are many, many Facebook groups and support groups out there that are a lot of women going through the process who may be giving advice with the best of intentions, but it may be state specific, situation specific. So always make sure you're really accessing the experts in your area to get the correct information. Anyone else have anything to add on the legal safety side of things? Lisa, Dr. Lisa, sorry.
When you're deciding to leave, you need to do that strategically, especially if you're in a place where you aren't safe. And by the time you decide to leave, you pretty much know you're in a place that you're not safe. Because unfortunately for us in most of the world, when our spouses find out that we're leaving or we do leave, the likelihood of us losing our lives rises by 250%. And unfortunately, we die by the hands of those that we're supposed to protect and love us. So when you decide that you're getting ready to leave, try to do so strategically. Contact your domestic violence shelters. Go to the police who have domestic violence advocates who can help walk you through the process, because there's a very strategic way to get out safely and to get your children out safely.
Thank you. Rhonda, were you going to say something or did I miss?
Yeah, no, we're in sync, girl. No, I was just thinking, kind of along those lines, right? Like there's a couple other practical things that people can sometimes do. And it's the, hey, just in case bag, right? Having something in your trunk with, a change of clothes and an extra, set of toiletries and all of that kind of stuff. And in addition to that, one of the things that we did a podcast very early on when I launched my podcast, and one of the women was sharing a couple things. Like she would go to the store and get extra toilet paper or extra tampons or extra, whatever supplies, right? And she would keep them in a friend's house, knowing that if she needed to leave, that was one less thing that she needed to worry about. The other thing is sometimes people will do, hey, I went to Target and I did a cash back for $20 and then we pocket, so there's little strategies that people can use. But I think, like you were saying, Freddie, in the midst of that process, it's always tricky. And again, I was just there in January. You're like, okay, who are we calling? Right. And it's very, it can be very challenging to say, well, it's really not that bad. Or I do not want people saying, well, he didn't hit me. So that's always what they say. Right. But what we're seeing more and more of, particularly when people are going to be going through divorce, is the coercive control, the emotional, the psychological. I mean, I don't know. The amount of abuse that's happening is absolutely, and yesterday, right, we were on a call for my bridge program and I got pretty emotional. And Rebecca's always so good at like giving me a minute. I was thinking about that this morning. She was like, and here's what let me just take it from here. Cause she gives me an opportunity to recompose, but I was very upset. And I was upset because I have a couple clients right now who are being absolutely abused by the system.
Yeah.
And I'm so over it. Like I was saying yesterday, I'm like, I want to swear and I don't even swear. Like the amount of times I wanted to say drop F-bombs in the last week. My husband's like, what's your deal? But he appreciates how fired up I get, And I will also say, like, there are times when we don't always have all the answers, but we are going to fight to find them. Mm-hmm. And half of the battle is making sure that we've got the right people. Every single person that's on this panel sees you. They see you. They see the abuse that's happening. We're not going to get bamboozled by their, sweetness and their charmingness. Right? Anybody on here like, yep, I'm following? No.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
And the thing is, Rhonda, is that unfortunately, with the coercive control, by the time we get to the place where we're ready to leave, hopefully we've been able to invest in some good trauma therapy with trauma therapists and trauma coaches, depending on where you are emotionally and psychologically, so that you can actually recognize the tactics that are being used against you by your spouse. But many times women come into this and they haven't done any of that work and they don't have eyes to see. In medicine, we say the eye sees what the mind knows. So when you're looking at your spouse, by the time you have gone so far in it, have entered cognitive dissonance. Your body and your brain have had to make a decision as to whether you're going to believe yourself or you're going to believe your spouse. And in order to survive, we've got to a place where we've just entered peacekeeping mode to avoid the chaos. And what we don't realize is when we do leave, when we enter the divorce process, we need to become experts on what the tactics are that our spouses use, because they continue to use the same tactics during the divorce process and the legal process that they implemented upon you all through your marriage. Yet if you're not able to see them and dodge what they're doing and remain on your game plan, a lot of us get caught up in over explaining and wondering if we're asking too much and feeling that we're being too sensitive. And so we need to come to a place where we get some good grounding when we enter the divorce process so that we can continue with our game plan and be able to look at our spouses when they implement some sort of coercive control attempt or gaslight us, to be able to look at them and say, oh, there you are.
Whew, we're starting out heavy today, huh? All right. On that note, we have covered a lot of the heavy upfront stuff. I'm going to make an attempt to have a not so awkward segue into our next bucket of questioning, which is the financial aspects of things. And I will say personally, when I first was like, oh God, what's happening to me? I was advised very quickly to just move a trunk of money to my own account so I had access to things, right? And following up on when you go to Target, just get a few extra things. Additionally, if you've got a spouse who doesn't track your Amazon purchases, every week I was like buying a few things and shipping them to my friend's house, things that I knew I would need once I like left the family home. So there are ways to get creative with that. But as we're thinking about that next step, you're making the move, which is often when they go ballistic and take all your money. We're going to kind of move into the financial bits and pieces of your financial safety and keeping you fiscally solvent and available funds and all those things. I would love if one of our panelists can speak to just kind of at large what financial abuse can look like, because a lot of us might not even recognize it.
Rhonda, you want to take that or you want me to take that?
Well, I'll kick it off, and then I know that you'll probably have some things to add. This is one where, to give people a little bit of context, when I realized how bad this could be. So this was about 7 years ago, and I was meeting with a domestic violence advocate in a very affluent area here in Wisconsin. And I was not naive enough to think that it didn't happen there, but the level in which it happened, I was like, holy cow. So basically what they said was, yeah, we had a woman whose spouse literally controlled every aspect of the financial picture and would only give her debit cards for groceries, debit cards for purchases, so she had no checking, no savings, no cash. And while that might feel like an extreme example, there's lots of iterations of that where we see that. And this gal basically said, yeah, the woman got up to the stoplight. She was with her, spouse and bolted. She got out of the car and ran. And so you've got, somebody who really, again, the financial aspect was kept to control and manipulate. Now, so what are some of the signs? I mean, for me, and again, anytime I've had, a lot of times the guys are like, well, Rhonda, is it really, just XYZ? And while some of the things, yeah, somebody's going to have a two-step authentication on their phone and it goes to one party. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily controlling, right? If the parties are having a conversation and there's open communication and transparency. But anytime there's an aspect of trying to control passwords, trying to control access to funds, credit cards, sometimes people are only authorized users. And while they can use the card, they can't see the statements. They don't know what's going on. And quite frankly, they don't even know what their spouse is spending. But they're the ones who are under the microscope as far as what they're spending. There is, putting assets in one party's name only and not, titling things jointly. One of the things that I've seen, unfortunately, particularly in higher net worth situations, is where individuals will create trusts and multiple trusts and sometimes it's irrevocable trusts or trusts that have all of these, fences and boundaries, and it makes it very difficult for people to get access to the money because now they're saying, well, the entity owns it, the trust owns it. We don't own those assets. Most recently, I saw where a client's husband had at least 12 whole life insurance policies and was funding them to the tune of about $12,000 a month, saying he didn't have any money. And all the money was going to these whole life policies as a way to divert assets. So, I mean, we see all kinds of things, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, are they using money and the financials in some way, shape, or form to control?
You know, Rhonda, I wanted to piggyback on that whole premise that you brought up about one of the biggest ways that you can discern financial abuse within your marriage is when your spouse wants to do something, money is never an issue. There's always plenty of money to do exactly what he wants to do, whether that's buy a new car or go on vacation or invest in a business or go out to an expensive dinner. But for you to express that need and that desire for the same things, those things are not okay. And when you want to buy something, you do buy something, you are scrutinized for what you purchased, how much you spent on it, and you're reminded that there's a budget and that we need to be frugal and that you are spending beyond your means. And that is a very sure sign that you are in a financially abusive power over and control over relationship with the finances. And the other thing that a lot of us don't understand is that your name, you can be on a title of a car. Like your husband can move forward and make it look as if the two of you are on the title of a car. None of us thinks to look at who's the lien holder on that registration, because many of our spouses will tell us that what is ours. Yet, if we went to sell it, we would be unable to sell it because our spouse would have to sign off as the lien holder on the car that is fully paid off. So those are some things that are very insidious. They're very covert. And initially, it makes you feel like you're going crazy because you don't understand the dynamics of what is going on. Why is it okay for your husband to take the kids and plan a trip to Disneyland, but it's not okay for you to take the kids and plan a trip to Disneyland? There are a whole bunch of double standards when it comes to the finances, and that's the sure way you can identify that you're in a financially abusive relationship.
Can I just say, I spend a lot of time with you people and I learn something every single time. Just to add a personal anecdote to those of us who are listening, in my situation, I was told to cancel the cleaning service because I was home more often and could clean the house. And then he put a deposit on a Cybertruck. So like, yes to all your points.
And there you go.
Oh my goodness. I also do, along the lines of whose name is on whatever, I've seen some questions recently from women in the real estate space of, I don't even know if I'm on the mortgage or if I'm on the title, and just being aware and doing the homework and understanding. It feels super daunting, but every little bit you can do to gain some sort of just knowledge and control will help you along the way. I know a big part of the Bridge program, thanks to Rhonda, is really getting a handle on the finances and all the accounts and documenting and labeling and all that stuff. Rhonda, do you have any advice on maybe the baby steps as people are getting prepped for this, of how to kind of start organizing and documenting their stuff, their financial stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple things, and it depends on the access that people have to information. I think one of the biggest challenges that people have is, well, yeah, but Rhonda, I don't have access to information.
Right.
But there are sleuthful ways that we can find it. So one of the best ways is to request transcripts from the IRS. And the IRS transcripts, it's funny because I'm actually taking an additional certification on financial litigation. And I'm learning some really interesting things. And one of the things that they said in there was, hey, people could doctor up 1040s. And I was like, excuse me, what? I'm not saying that I'm like, that isn't possible. I'm like, people really, there's still a part of me that's like, people really do that. What is wrong with people? right? But we're not dealing with logical, reasonable people. So getting the transcript is the surest way. It is coming directly from the IRS, directly to your mail inbox. And you can go to the IRS website and request that, and they will send it. Kind of along those lines, if you're concerned that as you request that information, that your spouse is potentially going to see it come in the mail, the second step to that is going to the UPS or USPS and requesting informed delivery, which is really cool. It is an email service that takes a picture of all the email that's coming, or all the mail that's coming to your inbox, and emails it to you. So then you are tipped off of when that might be coming in the mailbox, and that day you just happen to go out and make sure you get the mail. And then the last part of it is sometimes, like if you've refinanced your home when interest rates went down, or things like that, you can, if you have that paperwork that's maybe in a file, dig that up, because there are some of those documents that will show a lot of information. But it's baby steps for sure. And the last thing that I will say is, women are really good at being PIs and private investigators on the financial side when they really have to. That additional attention, like, what is that credit union statement that came in the mail? What is that? Oh, look, what's in the recycling bin? Like, we just have to be hyper aware, right? Diligent in looking for things. I had a client who got one of those statements from a credit union, and she opened it because she was like, oh, what is this, right? Junk mail, whatever. Well, inside that shows a $5 savings account. For anybody who knows anything about credit unions, usually if you have something there, a loan, another account, something, they'll say you got to have a $5 credit, like a $5 savings account. Well, in further investigating what there was, guess what? A home equity line of credit. So they had a HELOC at the credit union. Well, we would not see that unless we look for these little clues. So, just be aware of those things, take little steps, get access to the things that you can. The one other, I keep saying, and one more thing, but I'll wrap it up with this one. Social Security statements, okay? It's another thing that, again, we have to look at what is it that you can control? What can you get access to without your spouse's consent? And Social Security statement is another great thing. You can go to ssa.gov and pull your statement. Why do we want that? Again, because it's going to give us historical information about your earning history. So when your soon-to-be ex-spouse says, yeah, but you could be making, $200,000 a year, you're like, and in what universe? Because since I was 16 years old, I have not made 200, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a very clear historical record of those things. And again, bit at bit, little bits at a time, right? Can really add up.
Yes. One note on the HELOC that was something that was brought to my attention while I was going through this. We have existing home equity lines that have not been touched, but they're sitting there with a couple $100,000 that could be accessed. I actually called the bank and said, both of our names are on this. Can you put a note in the file that if any of this money is accessed, I'm notified? And they're more than happy to do that once you kind of explain the situation. So I think just taking back some of that control just makes this all feel more manageable. Another random thought that I know is in this ballpark is the financial empowerment, because oftentimes, for good or for ill, the husbands are the breadwinners and the women might be the caretakers, the homemakers, the lower, less employed. And so in this next iteration of our lives, making money can be scary. And how do we do that? This is not a pitch for me, but a few years ago, I wrote a book, 15 Ways to Make Money While You Stay at Home. I'm actually going to drop the PDF in the Bridge group so that anyone can access it. It's just little things, little side hustles, ways that you can get some income that will be yours and help you feel a little more secure in your finances. So if I don't do it, someone ping me and remind me, but I should get in there today for everyone. Any other thoughts on financial safety before we move on?
Yeah, if I could jump in on something that Rhonda mentioned. Absolutely right that women are hands down some of the best investigators out there. With all of the women that I work with, once we can kind of talk out some of the physical safety concerns, as soon as they get that sense of relief, the other things I start to talk about, they notice like, oh yeah, I know this, I know that. And absolutely, that informed delivery is magic, because when you sign up for it, if you never paid attention to your mail before, you will start to get to see a pattern, so that when you do that thing that Rhonda said, you want to try to get a statement. What we've suggested that a lot of our clients do when they can is give it like maybe 2-3 weeks, so you can get yourself a decent data set, or at least a month, to find out when your statements will say that they're coming through. So then when you try to ask for other stuff, put a mail hold on your mail for about a week. So then you can just run there, collect all of it, unhold the mail, and then you've been able to go do your stuff.
Love that idea. That is a fabulous idea, Freddie. Yes.
Agreed. I will also add from personal experience, if there are statements that come in both your names, so like I moved and I forwarded my mail, but if statements come in both your names, it will only be forwarded if your name is listed first.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware of that with the USPS. Anyone else on the financial safety, financial empowerment, Rebecca?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the person that you were married to is the same person that you're going to have to go through that divorce with, only now it's like times 20. So if there was financial abuse going on during the relationship, that's going to continue in your divorce process. And you should not expect just any old professional to understand those personal dynamics that are going on and put a stop to it. You need to really, like we said before, seek out a team of people that understand what's going on and can help you navigate through it, because it often turns into legal abuse. So maybe you don't have access to money and now they're using their assets to hire some big attorney. Maybe they're going to go through multiple attorneys, multiple mediators, say they're going to mediate, then pull out of mediation, then try somebody else. The minute that a professional tells them something they don't want to hear, they're no longer interested in the process. And they can really try and manipulate the system to their advantage unless you have professionals in place that see that and know how to help you navigate that in a way that doesn't let it snowball into something that, left to its own devices can become an unhinged process that snowballs into you having to deal with this and that, court appearance or whatever it may be over and over again without the assets to really help you answer it in the way that you should. You need to have professionals that help you respond instead of react, that help you know exactly what your rights are and what you do and don't have to deal with, because it can get really ugly during the divorce process in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Amy, the last thing that I want to bring up is many of us are only authorized users on credit cards. If you're the authorized user, you're not building credit in your name. That credit is being built in your spouse's name because he's the primary user and he's authorized you to use the card. So if you choose to leave and enter into the divorce process, you lose complete access to that card because it was never your card in the first place. So I highly recommend join Credit Karma. They will help you build your credit slowly and steadily. And it's a great way for you to be able to have be prepared when you want to leave. You need to find your own space. You need to have credit. Everybody runs a credit report on you. And if you've never had a credit card in your name or different types of credit in your name, you're going to show up with very little credit and a low FICO score. And that's going to make it less likely that you will be able, between two people who are going up for an apartment or a condo, to be the one that qualifies for it. So start developing your own credit now, little by little. And Credit Karma, I highly recommend it. It does a great job in helping you build your credit and have your own empowerment in what you know your value is according to the world standard financially of what credit score means.
And you're also responsible for everything that your spouse does until you put some sort of agreement in place that says you're not, or until you file for that divorce. And there are things you can put in place so that, let's say he's a gambler or a big spender. You put something in place so that debt that's about to occur does not become your responsibility. Because without a document in place that protects you from that, you're still married. That's still your liability.
Ooh, so much to process. I'm actually going to leverage something that Rebecca said, that person you were married to is still that same person you're going to be divorcing times 20. So yes, those somewhat negative behaviors that you dealt with for X number of years are now just going to be through a loudspeaker. And so I want to keep that frame in mind as we move to like the emotional safety piece, because I think this is where so many of us get really rattled, because we learn to manage their, not so great behaviors over the course of our marriage, but now it's nasty on steroids and we've got to protect ourselves and set some boundaries. I would love some thoughts on how we can protect our own mental health and our sanity while going through a super stressful process. Dr. Lisa, are you chomping at the bit on this one?
Self-care is huge. I mean, it would be so, in a perfect world, we all would have gone through 2 or 3 years of therapy or coaching to understand the betrayal that we've experienced, to understand the abuse that we've experienced, to be able to come to a place where we are grounded and we see clearly what is happening to us. Because what's happened in our marriages, we've been told is because of us. And all of us, we've gone to isolation where they're isolating us by telling us that the people around us don't have our best interests at heart and they don't love you. And that doesn't sound like such a good idea. Or we self-isolate because it's too much to tell our people and explain why our person's not with us, or to have to make an excuse for the offhanded or off-colored or creepy remark they made to your friend, or to be so overwhelmed with the gaslighting that's happening to you at home that you isolate yourself because you're so exhausted from dealing with all of the gaslighting that's been going on in your marriage. We don't have the people in place to help support us. And I always say, when you enter the divorce process, you really need a tripod. You need your financial person, you need your attorney, and you need your coach or therapist. I always say, when you asked Amy, if you're thinking about entering into this and you're thinking about seeking a divorce, what should you do first? I will let you know. My clients, I let them know. Before you talk to an attorney, I want you to talk to Rhonda. Because the divorce process is so expensive. And if you can do a program like Rhonda's, and you can come out on the other side, understanding where you stand financially, and get some emotional and psychological grounding underneath you also with the team that we have in place, then you're at a much better place to move forward with an attorney and or a mediator and be able to advocate well for yourself. So when you're going through a divorce process, like you said, Amy, the person you're married to, they are on steroids. And we think the justice system is a just system. The justice system is not a just system. You have attorneys and professionals all the time and judges that have no training in coercive control and abuse. And therefore, your spouse will exploit the legal system to the nth degree to continue to exert power and control over you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Really appreciate, the shout out, because I think at the end of the day, there's a couple things that, as you were talking, Lisa, I was just kind of jotting down. One of the things that I've been seeing around this area, and I just sent out an email to a client this morning about this, and that is this aspect of, women coming to the table and wanting to be amicable. They want things to be fair. They don't want to take them to the cleaners. We get all of that. But at the end of the day, their soon-to-be ex is using that as an opportunity to manipulate. And it's creating this inner dissonance where it's like, oh, okay, well, he said that he's going to sell the business. He said that it's not worth anything. He said that we have no, he has no money. And it's like, in what world? Like, it's just absolutely mind-boggling to me. And literally what it feels like is where they're like, well, I'm just taking my toys and going home and I'm selling the business and I'm going to run it into the ground and you're going to have nothing and blah, blah, blah. And the women are like, oh, maybe that's true. No, this business is worth X amount of, no, right? So I think that certainly we've got to be able to say, okay, you got to have the people on your team that can say, no, that's not true. And here's what we're going to do about that. Or here's how we need to approach it. That kind of comes into the negotiation. So there's a couple different phases as we're going through this. There's that initial, like, I haven't told him yet, and I'm really feeling anxious, and we got to get stuff in order. Then there's the, hey, the cat's out of the bag, we're filing, and now you've got that aspect. But then we get another ramp up as we're getting into the negotiations because people really start to use that as a way to control and manipulate. And I've told people, I've said this ad nauseum, probably the last week. Listen, if you want a neutral person, I'm not your person. If you want an advocate, I'm your person. Mm-hmm. Now, kind of along those lines, I feel like we got to address something that I'm seeing, which is, hey, everybody's like, hey, we were going to be amicable and we're going to sing Kumbaya and we're going to do mediation. Bull, you know what? Okay. The only time that I will ever suggest mediation to my clients is if you have a mediator who understands the dynamics of power and can appeal to getting that done with a resolution focus like Rebecca. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, right, what I'm seeing is everybody's moving in the direction of mediation because the professionals are so freaking burned out that they're like, well, I got to do mediation because it's going to be easier for me. It's not because it's better for the client, right? And so I think that we think that we're going to have a better, like the process is going to be better. We're going to be able to be all peaceful and calm. So we're going to do mediation. Yes.
It absolutely depends on what that process looks like. Mm-hmm. And we talk about this all the time. Certainly there are cases that cannot be mediated. They exist. However, a lot of really high conflict matters can be mediated so long as that mediator understands that equitable does not mean equal. And they take the time to find out what's really going on, what's keeping you up at night, what the issues really are behind the scenes, and can address them so that we're not putting the cart before the horse. To Lisa's point about getting informed before you jump into the process, yes, when I even have a consultation with clients, let's say one of the parties is at a disadvantage, whether that's that power imbalance that we mentioned earlier, or they lack certain financial knowledge, they just don't have their arms around what's going on financially. I want them to do bridge, to talk to Rhonda, to get a handle on the financial situation and learn what they don't know and learn the right questions to ask before they ever negotiate anything. Otherwise, that negotiation is not going to have an equitable outcome. And there is nothing wrong and nothing unfair about becoming the CEO of your situation, because that's what you need to do. You need to know everything you're entitled to. You need to know every asset and liability that you guys have. You need to be able to distinguish the BS from the reality of what's going on with your situation financially and be able to make a plan for what it's going to look like on the other side of this. What is your monthly budget? What do you need to move ahead comfortably? And then how are we going to accomplish that? And that should be happening before you are agreeing to any particular term in a divorce agreement.
Because Rebecca, that's really one of the biggest things, one of the biggest reasons we stay in the relationship is because of the fear around the uncertainty of our financial ability to support ourselves. And if we can get that under our belts and feel secure and empowered in that, it seems that the other things fall into line because we can engage our prefrontal cortex into the whole process rather than constantly moving out of our limbic system, which is basically fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Right? So if we can get that under our belt, it just gives us a great firm foundation to understand where we're acting from in a place of empowerment rather than fear. So I love that.
The other thing I was thinking, and then Freddie, I want you to weigh in on something, but one thing that I've heard, again, like I start to see trends where certain things ramp up, and then I see, areas where we need to be more vocal about certain things, and they lead to blog articles and blog posts and social media posts. And one of the things that I've been hearing a lot of lately is the attorneys saying, hey, you just need to trust me. 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 And it's really making me frustrated because, right? Like, okay, what does that look like? And I'm not saying you shouldn't trust them. I'm not saying that you come to the table like, I'm just trusting everybody and I hate the world. But you need to have a place where you can ask questions, that they're open to working collaboratively with other partners, because I'm looking at something from a very different vantage point than Freddie or Lisa or Rebecca or Amy, right? I mean, we're all bringing a different lens based on our area of expertise. And I've seen stuff go sideways when people are not willing to maybe being listened by their attorney or are willing to challenge what's going on. It's been really, really tricky. And women's outcomes as a result of that are, I don't want to say less than ideal, but are really putting them in a challenging position.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Freddie, can you weigh in quick before we switch gears on just from your perspective on a personal safety? Like when you hear people talk about mediation in a general sense, right? Like you've just got this general mediator who maybe doesn't specialize in a particular area. And they're like, oh, well, we want the shortest, fastest, cheapest option available, so we're going to do mediation. What are your thoughts?
So just like Rebecca said, there does exist a reasonable amount of circumstances where mediation can work and does work very, very well. However, I think when we really look at the things that lead to that are all of the building blocks for that bridge that other folks don't have. So a lot of times they come to us with the example you said, and we're trying to help navigate them from not having any foundation at all because they had emotional abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse that has eroded that, or maybe they just came from a bad situation at home and an upbringing, found their Prince Charming who really just wanted to have a ready-made person that was going to be super docile and then finally show their true colors. So we're operating with a person that doesn't have those building blocks. And as we try to provide them with that empowerment to get that can take a little bit of time, or we have to step on the gas because time is of the essence. I always say that when it comes to physical safety, I move at the speed of life. I have customers say like, oh my God, I need to get out of here. I'm afraid for my kids. I'm like, okay, number one, I believe you. But if this is true in your mind, here's some things you need to do. But then, they kind of back up a little bit. And this isn't to disparage them that they're exaggerating. They feel that they're in a lot of danger. It's like, well, we need to get the police. We need to do this or this. But then that seems like it's going too fast. And it's like, well, if we need to slow down, let's also maybe look at what are some other things we need to do. So with that, when it comes to a person wanting to go to mediation, I always am hesitant because it seems as if they're just asking me for permission to do the easy thing because it's scary, and because they're not used to being strong and being empowered, and they just kind of want it to be over. And I totally get that. Not pulling any punches, here's how I usually tell them to think about it, because it's always their choice as well. When we were children, we used to be afraid of the boogeyman underneath the bed. And we would just lay there and freak out and just hide in our covers until the morning. And then every night we would still just try to wish it away. Well, when it comes to real life boogeymen, we can't keep playing that game that we're just going to wish it away. We have to get that courage or call for help who can come there and turn on those lights. So then the boogeyman has disappeared. Once we learn that we can defend against that boogeyman, we want to take that mentality to all boogeymen. In our self-defense classes, or when I work with folks that are going through a divorce, I'd like to think that principally, or I actually really feel principally, that it is the same, where when I work with them, I'm not trying to help them beat their husband in a divorce case. I'm trying to help, I guess the nice way to say, fix any bad code. If we think of ourselves as a software program, if we fix that bad code that made it hard for them to make the decision of, you know what, this person is no longer who I thought they were. They no longer have integrity, no longer have respect, things like that. I don't have to put up with that. I know that my safety and my children's safety is more valuable than putting up with this. I'm just going to go ahead and do what I need to do. And if it gets me some ridicule from him, his family, whatever, they feel strong enough in who they are that they can move through that. But a lot of times we have to let them know, like, hey, we're going to need to put those building blocks back in there. If you don't have that and you go to mediation, you're kind of shrinking yourself still. And so then when things don't go their way, then they feel even more defeated. And so I like to try to tell them, like, well, if you want to do the mediation, like Rebecca said, you need to have a great mediator. And like Oliver was saying, you need to have that dream team, because you need all of those folks, not only being your cheerleaders, but also your coach, but to keep reminding you, like, hey, once you do this, you're going to protect yourself to be less susceptible from this with weird relationships at jobs or with other family members. It just makes you resilient everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, there are two great resources out there, Freddie, that I recommend to everybody. One is Dr. Ramani's new book, It's Not You. And then there's a coach, Sarah Morales. She has a course on deconstructing gaslighting. Excellent course for you to go through if you have been in an abusive, emotionally, psychologically damaging marriage. Helps you see very clearly as to what's happening to you. Because the thing is like when we go into it, we don't want to poke, like, this is what I hear. Well, I put this in the discovery, or I put this in my agreement, but I don't know, because I don't want to poke the bear. And my answer to that is, it doesn't matter if you didn't do anything, you'd be poking the bear. So stop worrying about poking the bear and focus on your game plan, because that's the only way where you're going to get out of this healthy and well and be able to start over again. You can't keep worrying about poking the bear. The bear is going to get poked no matter what you do. So just do what's best for you. And you're going to have to deal with the bear being poked.
I love that, Lisa, because that's what I was thinking as both of you were talking, is that so often someone who's in that situation where the other person has had all the power, we're thinking, I don't want to piss him off. I don't want to make it worse. I'm going to do this or that because otherwise we're going to set him off. And you're right. He's going to be set off anyway. And you cannot control him and you cannot change him. But what you can control is how you handle the situation and how you choose to respond, and figuring out what you need and how you're going to advocate for that is within your control. And that's what's actually going to change the situation.
Absolutely. And Rhonda asked me in the notes to mention Dr. Ramani's new book. It's called It's Not You. And it is a primer on abusive relationships and understanding what's happening to you, and actually very good at helping you understand that the way we react to being under that for so long is not abnormal. It's an absolutely normal reaction to what we've been experiencing, and it's born out of the need to survive. I love her. I think that Dr. Romani is the foremost professional on narcissistic personality disorders and personality disorders, period, and how to deal with them effectively.
I love all of this, and I realize we're coming up on time. I just want to share 2 quick anecdotes to kind of tie this all up in terms of just we as women have tremendous value and we are worth so much, and we owe it to ourselves to do everything we can to come out the other side of this and be successful and have amazing lives. We don't have to make excuses. We don't have to justify what we're asking for. We have worked hard. We have supported our spouses, our children, our families, and we deserve so much. So stay strong in your beliefs and, support yourself through this. It's not easy. It's a bumpy road at times for sure. But I just want everyone to know that we believe in you and we're here to support you. Rhonda, any kind of closing thoughts for the panel? I don't know if we have Q&A from any listeners. Oh, you're muted.
I don't know if there is any specific questions from, yes, of course, a couple other things in the chat as far as book references and stuff like that. So the one that Rebecca shared was Bill Eddy's book, Splitting.
Very, very good resource.
So we're just all about, being able to share resources. No, I think, I just want to reiterate, just so grateful for how everybody on this panel is aligned. I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for those that were in the live audience and your comments as we went through our time together. And of course, thank you to our amazing host and moderator, Amy Slate, the breakup broker, which I always say your breakup broker. I think we are at a really great place to give people a lot of resources to be thinking about. And again, as I mentioned, when we kicked off our time together, we're going to include all of the websites and contact information for each of the people on this panel. So if there's anything that we can do to help you, do not hesitate to reach out, because we are all here, not just because it's our job, right? We are all passionate about empowering women, helping you navigate through in a safe and healthy way. And we look forward to hopefully having an opportunity to be part of your story as well.
Hey, Rhonda, before we leave, me and my practical tips, can we leave the ladies with one practical thing to do to help calm their nervous system when they're deregulated?
That would be amazing.
So it's the rule of 5. So you just get little makeup bags, and if you like essences or gum or jelly bellies, you put it in a bag, and when you're feeling dysregulated, you take out a jelly belly or a piece of gum or a oil essence that you've taken the labels off of, and you either smell it, eat it, and then you have to give your body time to process and figure what flavor or what scent is it. And doing that, even though it seems very simple, helps to re-engage your prefrontal cortex. And it's a very good way when you're dysregulated to be able to discreetly bring yourself back to a grounded state. That's it.
I love that. I'm the queen of meditation, but that one is and also like a quick in the moment.
It is.
Cool your jets kind of thing.
And nobody knows what you're doing.
Yep.
Right? You can sit in the presence of somebody and be dysregulated, and you can just open your bag and have your jelly belly and stick it in your mouth and go, is that peanut butter?
Oof.
Or is that
or
is that mango? Right? And it makes your critical thinking skills come right back on board.
And you know what's interesting about that, right? So kind of to end on a fun note, So what's the one flavor of Jelly Belly that you would not put in your bag?
Popcorn.
Popcorn. That was totally mine. Popcorn.
And I'm a Jelly Belly connoisseur. Like when they have those dispensers, I'm like a moth to the light, and I will go out and like buy pounds of them.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna
Yes,
on that one.
popcorn is gross. Freddie, how about you? Which was you're like, do not, I'm not putting that in there.
As soon as Amy said the popcorn one, I was like 100%. Normally, it was like I don't care for the black licorice, but I'll eat the whole bag of black licorice before I eat one of the popcorn ones. They just don't taste good at all.
I love it.
Oh, and
Also super disappointing if you think you're getting cherry and it turns out to be hot cinnamon.
oh, that is a total
The
bummer.
worst.
That's true.
And Lisa, how about you? What's yours that you're like,
Oh, popcorn. It's disgusting.
I mean,
Like, no. Yeah.
so if there's anybody listening who wants popcorn, you can have all of
We'll
ours.
send them to you. We'll bucket them and mail them to you.
That could be in the bamboozled, right? Like you're getting one where you're like, oh, I think it tastes like something gross.
Yep.
Oh no, they have those packs, guys. They
I
have
know.
packs of the gross things.
No.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. No, thank
So
you.
if you're in a pressure cooker situation in mediation or with attorneys and you feel like you're just not sure if you want to sign something, you can say, I'm just going to step out for a moment and give it some thought and I'll be right back. And you can go down the hall or out to the park, wherever you are, and take your moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or like my one client did in the midst of mediation was like, oh, I have to go smoke. I'm like, you smoke? She's like, well, today I do.
Today I do.
Today I do. I'm like, all right, see you in a little bit.
I love it.
Oh, some people say they get driven to, drink, and some people get driven to smoke. I don't know. But I like Lisa. Let's go with our little bag of, mints,
Jelly Belly.
essence, Jelly Bellies, anything other than popcorn, and we're good to go.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Oh, this was a fantastic way, an absolutely fantastic way to wrap up our time together today. So looking forward to being able to continue the conversation. Do not hesitate to reach out if we can help you. And thank you for spending some time with us today.